In this video, you're going to learn about crucial modifications that add extreme horsepower to your car. You're not only going to learn everything you need to know about these mods, but we're also going to analyze them by their price, horsepower, and torque added, and we are going to figure out which one actually adds the most to your car for the price that you pay. I'm Jeff from Modern Muscle 213, and today you're going to learn everything you need to know about modifications that add extreme horsepower to your car. The first mod I want to talk about is upgrading to a cold air intake. Upgrading to a performance cold air intake is one of the easiest and most affordable ways to increase horsepower. Factory systems are designed with priorities other than performance, like low intake noise and cost. Most vehicles come from the factory with restrictive air boxes and cheaper air filters. Typical power gain with a cold air intake is around 10 to 20 horsepower, and the average cost can be anywhere from $200 all the way up to $500. The next mod is going to be a larger diameter throttle body. Installing a large diameter throttle body with bigger flaps allows air to flow into the engine, increasing several aspects of your engine performance. The average cost for these mods would be $100 to $500 for the throttle body and about $50 for the spacer. Up next, we have exhaust headers. Meeting both emissions requirements and maintaining low production costs can limit the ability of your stock exhaust manifolds. This makes aftermarket exhaust headers a good place to find extra horsepower and increased torque. Headers usually deliver a horsepower gain of about 50 to 40 horsepower and can cost anywhere from about $500 for shorty headers all the way up to about $2,000 for long tube headers. Up next, we have high flow catalytic converters. A high flow cat is responsible for the same task of reducing emissions, only faster. A high flow cat is focused on increasing the flow capability of your engine to help it make more power. High flow cats increase power across the RPM range, though most noticeably in the lower RPM range, to deliver a boost of both torque and horsepower. High flow catalytic converters can cost you around $100 to $200 and can increase horsepower moderately. Up next, we have the catback exhaust system, which replaces your restrictive stock muffler and factory exhaust pipe. Paired with high flow cats, this superior system increases both torque and airflow to improve horsepower. The average cost of a catback exhaust system can range anywhere from $800 to $1,500. Catback users can also see a 20 to 30 increase in horsepower and about 88% increase in flow from the engine. Up next, we have performance chips and programmers. Utilizing power programmers and performance chips to adjust your vehicle settings like fuel to air ratio, turbo boost, and ignition timing, you can easily increase horsepower and torque. Performance software is easy to use and even comes programmed with pre-made or customizable tunes. The average horsepower gained from this modification is about 30 horsepower, and the cost can range anywhere from $500 all the way up to $1,500. The next modification is nitrous oxide, also known as NOS. The purpose of NOS is to increase the power output of an engine. It does this by increasing the amount of fuel that can be burned by increasing oxygen supply. The average horsepower gains from NOS can be anywhere from 40 horsepower all the way up to 200 horsepower. The average price of a NOS setup is about $1,000. Last and certainly not least is forced induction. Forced induction systems like a supercharger or turbocharger compress the air flowing into your engine and offer the greatest performance increase. The average price for a forced induction system ranges from $3,000 to $10,000. The average horsepower gained can be anywhere from 100 to 400 horsepower, making it by far the most effective option for increasing horsepower in your car. Alright guys, now that we've discussed each modification, let's take a look at each from a price standpoint and also in the amount of horsepower gained. First thing I want to discuss with you guys is just the overall cost. Just taking a look at this figure right here, you'll notice that it starts off with the lowest being the cold air intake, followed by the throttle body, performance chips, catback exhaust headers, NOS, and forced induction. Next right here, we do have each one of the modifications broken out by horsepower gain. So as you guys can see again, you'll notice that it's pretty much the exact same, except with the catback exhaust changing with the performance chips and tunes. So pretty much the exact same layout. It looks like in terms of cost, the more you pay, the more horsepower you're going to get. So there's obviously a correlation with that. Let's take a look at this analysis, and let's look at it from in terms of how many horsepower are you getting for each dollar that you spend. Taking a look at this graph, it's actually pretty surprising. It looks like NOS is actually one of the best modifications that adds the most horsepower to your car for the money. Then after that is actually a cold air intake, which is pretty surprising. Throttle body and spacers comes up third. We have forced induction, performance chips and tunes. Headers, surprisingly, is very low on the list, guys, and so is Cat Pack exhaust. Okay, so that's actually pretty interesting when I thought about it. I kind of knew that Cat Packs, they didn't really add that much horsepower, but just taking a look at the analysis compared to other modifications, dude, it really doesn't. It's really not that effective. But honestly, let's be honest, guys, I did not add my Cat Pack on my car for extra horsepower. I added it for the sound, right? So in my case, that wasn't what I was looking for, but it is interesting nonetheless to see that. And then also another interesting thing, and this is pretty interesting because the majority of people on this channel, from my recommendations are get headers, get headers. Looks like headers is probably the lowest, or the second lowest modification that you can get for the price and for the horsepower you gain, right? It's a terrible deal compared to other modifications. But another thing I want to talk about with you guys is also going to be, I see right here that NOS is high up on the list, but of course there are some issues with NOS. NOS is very kind of risky when you put it in your engine. It's actually probably one of the riskiest things you could do to your car. There have been many cars that have been blown up by NOS, and there's probably other modifications that have to be done with the car when you put NOS in it as well. So even though you do get a lot of bang for your buck, it is probably one of the riskiest modifications you could do to your car, just in terms of, actually blowing your motor up or throwing a rod or doing something like that. So, but nonetheless, this is what it comes out to, guys. Okay, so pretty interesting, very interesting, right? Okay, so the next question I have, and I'm pretty sure everybody's wondering this, and a lot of people have this argument as well. All right, so if I have a full bolt-on versus forced induction, what if I just wanted to do one or the other, right? What if I wanted to either do full bolt-on, which is, cold air intake, throttle body, performance chips and tunes, Cat Pack exhaust, headers, NOS, all that kind of stuff, right? And let's throw some NOS in there too. I want to throw NOS on there. What horsepower would I gain? So based on my calculations, obviously this is just 100% guesses. These are ballpark numbers that I pulled from online. It looks like with my calculations, the horsepower gained from all these mods would be about 205 horsepower. Now, of course, this is conservative. I did try to go on the lower ends on everything, but it still came out. When you add the NOS to it, you do get a substantial horsepower gain. And I had the NOS at about 80 horsepower gain for the NOS. Okay, so the cost for that is about $6,000 for everything. And with the price you pay per horsepower is about $30 per horsepower, right? So the next thing was I looked at forced induction. Okay, what is forced induction? How does that compare? Well, honestly, it's actually pretty much the same in terms of cost analysis. From there, we have $30 per horsepower, and it's pretty much, from a price analysis standpoint, pretty much the same. Now, honestly, from my research that I've done, it looks like forced induction versus a full bolt-on car will probably win. Actually, pretty sure 100% chance that a supercharged car versus a car that's full bolt-on will most likely win that race, just due to the fact that the horsepower is 100%, it's right there, instant horsepower, right in the low RPM range, it keeps pulling, whereas, you have a bolt-on car which is on the higher RPM ranges, and it's going to take a while for it to catch up, and it'll probably be a little bit too late before somebody catches up to it. I'm just going to assume that a forced induction car is going to be a little bit faster, but taking a look at, the horsepower and stuff like that, it looks like if you wanted to choose between either doing all these modifications or just doing forced induction, it's going to look like forced induction is going to be your best bet. One of the issues with forced induction, obviously, is that it's very expensive. It's, it's not a cheap mod. That's why people do the other mods first, because they're cheap. $300 versus $6,000. Come on, I don't think that's even a question. But if you're really looking at it, from an economic standpoint, I would say, honestly, just do the supercharger. I mean, that's where you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck, really, in terms of total horsepower gained. Supercharger is where you want to do, right? That is 100% obviously. Now, Are there going to be other modifications you have to do to the car? I think from what I've read, some people have to do like long tube headers. There is some other modifications that have to be added on with the forced induction. But if we're just taking a look at a hypothetical standpoint, forced induction seems like the winner in terms of all these different modifications. And I'm pretty sure people knew that, but looking at it very closely, it makes even more sense, right? We look at it from a money standpoint. So yeah, that's my analysis on this subject. What do you guys think? Do you guys think I got these right? And of course, these numbers, they're guesstimates, and they're not going to be perfect. I know some people will be like, oh no, horsepower, you get 30 more with a cool air intake. You can get 50, 100 with headers. I mean, look, this is just very conservative numbers here, and I think they're pretty honest because from what I've seen, you know, people that dyno with all these different modifications, a cold air intake, all these different throttle bodies, headers, you know, catbacks, they only gain like 50 horsepower overall on the dyno. So in terms, I think these numbers are probably inflated. I think the full bolt-on might be lower than what I have it here. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think I got it right? Do you think I got it wrong? What did I miss? What is missing? Let me know. Educate me. And yes, that's pretty much it. If you guys like this video, give it a big fat thumbs up. Also, if you like what you see at the channel, subscribe. Thanks again, guys. I hope to see you soon. Until next time.